Hey everybody, today I'm talking about 6 games that I really didn't like at all, unfortunately. Now this doesn't tend to happen very often because I do vet my games quite carefully, but sometimes things slip through the cracks, and I don't really like doing this, but I think it has to be done and it is necessary. So I'm going to be as brief as I can with these because I don't want to kind of kick a dog when it's down, but let's get started. And I'll start from my most favourite one out of these and slowly decline into my least favourite. So the first game I want to talk about is Fairy Tale Inn, which is actually, I think it only came out last year actually, by Paolo Mori, who is a great designer. He's made some fantastic games, and I was really excited for this one because this one really did try to put a new twist on the Connect 4 mechanism, where you have this vertical board, or vertical plastic structure basically, and you're trying to put these tiles in, trying to get points and money in different ways. I thought that was a really interesting idea. I think there's a lot of potential for a game to use that classic Connect 4 system, but to bring it into this day in gaming. But this game I felt really did miss the mark. So this one, you have a bunch of different these fairy tale characters. You're putting them on as you would with a Connect 4 piece, but you're trying to kind of line them up in different orientations to get money and points. Sometimes you want to get majorities in terms of the rows. Sometimes you want to stack ones on top of others or diagonal to others, all to get rewards in different ways or even punishments in different ways. The problem with this one was that I thought all the ways the tiles interacted and their powers and benefits were all so bland and boring. The decisions always felt extremely obvious about what to do. And just there was no spark there. You just kind of played on autopilot, and before you knew it, the game was over with little to no fun to be had from that experience. Now, I am somewhat lenient on this game because I think maybe it is, well, of course, it is tailored towards a younger audience. It has that mass market feel to it, and I think it could be successful if, to the right audience. But for me, it was just not good. And you could say a big unfair on a light game, but there are millions of or thousands of really light games out there that are fantastic. This one was just bland. So therefore, I think Fairy Tale Inn really did miss the mark, and was a missed opportunity really. The second game I'm talking about is Monstar by Megacorp Games, who had colossal hits with Scandalo and Awkward Guests. This one is a much smaller, little abstract card game, as you're basically trying to have the majority of your colour of monster on display after all the actions have been taken. And all an action consists of is moving one of these cards, which have, again, a monster type and a number on it. You're trying to overlap an animal or a monster with a lower card value than yours, or exactly one lower card value. And there's an alternative action where you can suck cards adjacent to you under yours. So you're basically trying to have the most frequent type of your monster on display at the end of all these actions or potential moves that could be made. The thing about this game was that not only are the actions extremely boring, it was dry to a fault. I mean, there was like literally no flavour in this game whatsoever, no spark, nothing fresh, nothing interesting, but also that one of the parts of this game that was supposed to be the hook was that you had a secret role. No one knew what monster you were, so therefore you had to kind of think and deduce what you were trying to do, and to decipher what monster you were, so they can maybe try and engulf you. But for me, after one turn or two, it was so obvious about which role people were that it kind of rendered that whole part of the game completely defunct. So I just thought this was not interesting whatsoever. It was boring. It was just awful, really. So that is Monstar. Was the second game. The next game is Rattus Cartus. This is the card game version of the of Rattus, which is an actual a game that I want to try. This one is a push your luck and hand management style game, as at the start of the game there's going to be a number of these cards placed face down, and on those cards there's going to be a number of these rat symbols. And that is going to determine the limit of rats you can have in your area at the end of the game. And if you ever go over that limit when it comes to the end of the game, you are automatically going to be disqualified from winning. But what a turn consists of in this game is by flipping one of these objective cards over, then each player almost tributing a number of cards to that objective of the matching type. So you could say have this, the church symbol, and you're playing a number of church cards, and depending on how many cards you play of that matching type determines how far you're going to climb up on these tracks. And that is basically what the game consists of. So I think there's 6 different suits of cards with a corresponding track to each of those. But the problem was that none of these tracks had anything unique about them. They're all exactly the same, completely zero-sum tracks where you could see exactly what other people were going to do, and there was no checkpoints or anything to make it interesting to reach certain points on those tracks, which I think is completely necessary with a game like this. And additionally, a lot of these times in this game, you would just completely top deck cards from the stack of cards, which is fine. But the problem was that you could end up acquiring a bunch of cards that the objective never came out that matched with it. So you could have a whole bunch of cards here that are just useless. And you could say, yeah, there is this option of putting cards down, which will give you rats, but you still go up the track when it doesn't match, which is fine. But the problem is that you are almost completely blind to how many rats there are. There are ways you can have a look at them, but sometimes that rat limit is so low that you don't even have that wiggle room to put those cards down into actually enjoy that push your luck mechanism. So there was just a combination of moving pieces here that just didn't come together in a good game. It took way too long. I'm talking 45 minutes here with next to no decision space, and like I said, it just was not interesting. The game could completely swing against you through no fault of your own, and I just did not enjoy it one bit. So that is Rattus Cartus. Next up is Design Town, also known as Flip City, I believe, and I'm not sure the differences between the two, but this one is like almost like a deck building push your luck style game, as you are revealing cards and trying to acquire money to buy new cards, all with the aim of reaching a certain amount of points and to be the first to trigger that. So I think it's really easy to make a good push your luck game. It's a very visceral mechanism, something you can get invested in quite easy because, who doesn't like that idea of, am I going to go bust or not? For some reason, this game managed to make that unfun. It was convoluted. There was too much here that didn't need to be there. It was long again. This game took 45 minutes to play and it was just excruciatingly long, boring and tedious. And again, I find it baffling to understand how a game manages to get push your luck wrong. It's not a hard thing to pull off, and this game managed to do that. And none of the buildings were particularly interesting when you'd upgrade them and flip them over, which was supposed to be one of the hooks of the game. It just felt like an absolute slog and a mess of a game that I'd highly avoid. This was supposed to be a filler push your luck game, and it just managed to completely go astray of that, and was a big miss for me. So that is Design Town. Avoid at all costs. The next game I'm going to talk about is Saboteur. So this is a traitor style game, as basically all but one player, maybe two, are going to work together to try and build this network of tunnels to reach these different cards, and basically to try and find this gold gem, I think. But the problem is that one of these players involved, and you don't know who that is the Saboteur, and they are trying to basically divert you off track and to avoid you getting to those gems before all the cards run out, or just to prevent you from doing so. I quite like the idea of this one. I thought it could be good, but in practice it's an absolute mess of a game. There's some really horrible take that moments, as you can play these cards just to completely nullify the abilities or the capability of any player taking an action on their turn, which was really boring. When it's your turn and somebody plays that card on you, you just have to waste your turn to get rid of that negative defect, and it's just really frustrating and annoying. Additionally, you'd always find that people would work together to a certain point, and then all of a sudden the Saboteur become overly obvious about who it was, and then start diverting you off, because there just wasn't that potential to do anything else. So I could see what it was trying to do, it just didn't pull it off. Again, I hated that idea of playing cards in front of people in order to stop them doing anything on their turn. It just was just not fun at all. I suppose one thing about this game is that it does cater to a higher player count, and it's, I suppose, a different direction to a party game when you do tend to have those higher player counts. But for me, the game still did fall very flat, and I just do not enjoy the game, simple as that. And the final game I'm going to talk about today is a game called Get Out of Colditz. I think this one was purely a Kickstarter game. I'm not sure if it's still widely available, but despite that, the game is absolutely terrible. So this one is one of those games where you're trying to lay out, I believe it's 3 cards of the same type, or 2 cards and then one of your escapees. And the idea is you're trying to escape from Colditz. But you're basically playing 2 of these rope cards or 2 of these tunnel cards. And you're basically trying to be the first player to get to a certain amount of these prisoners being escaped. But this one was one of those really dated games where you are just playing cards to cut your opponent off or to wipe their cards back. And it's kind of like constant back and forth, just start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. It becomes so frustrating and so tedious. And you just want it to come to an end before it does. It drags on too long. There's zero decision to be had in this game, and it's just an absolute catastrophe. I would just could not recommend this game to anybody really. There's no really redeeming features about it. It's just awful. So that is Get Out of Colditz. Also had one of the worst art styles I've ever seen. Basically these filtered photographs of these action men. It just looked awful as well as the gameplay being awful. So yeah, that's enough on Get Out of Colditz. So there we go. There's 6 negative reviews there. Not really a nice thing to do, but hey, here we are. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other video too. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.